What's going on, Chargers fans? Chargers Now is presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Will Ortner, and on today's show, we're going to be talking about some surprising starting lineup information that the Chargers got from ESPN. ESPN went through and ranked all teams 1 through 32, but they also came up with players that they thought would be the starters for each team. Now, a couple of the teams, they're 100% perfect. I don't know that the Los Angeles Chargers one is 100% perfect. So, on today's show, we're going to go through where they had the Chargers ranked at, my initial reaction to it, and then some different things that ESPN went through that they talked about that will really determine how well this Chargers team plays and performs and where it's going to end up being at. First of all, I want to thank everyone who's hit that subscribe button. If you haven't done so yet, please make sure that you do it. We're on the road to 5K right now. I want to say thank you to everyone who hit that sub button before the 4th. I hope you all had a wonderful 4th, and hopefully you had a little bit better of a time than I did. And that's where we'll leave it for right now. Producer Tom, stop laughing. All right, so the full screen photo here for that Chargers roster, according to ESPN, you got both sides of the football, offense and defense. And what I found very interesting here is that you've got pretty much most of the guys in the correct spots. What's, I think, the most impressive is that ESPN was able to really make sure that they had the correct players other than like 3 or 4. So if we're looking at this from a national perspective, that's pretty good, right? Making sure that you get everyone, all 22 guys listed in the correct spots. And aside from 2 or 3 little differences that I think, because we are true blue Charger fans and focusing on the Chargers here on the channel, that we're going to have that maybe ESPN won't. But that's where we're at right now. So my initial thoughts are interesting when it comes to the left guard, because they have Jake Slaughter at that left guard spot. I think if you've been following the channel, you've been subscribed, you know everything that's happening here, you would realize that Jake Slaughter has not been the starting left guard for this team, at least so far. So that is something interesting. Do ESPN and the writers over there have more inside information? Because this was not done by Chris Rim, their inside guy over there. Is this a possibility where, hey, they drafted him so high he must end up being the starter? Not really interested there. I disagree with the Chargers having 3 starting corners. They had Dante Jackson starting as a defensive starter for this team. And I frankly think that it'll be Tony Jefferson who's starting at safety, and that will mean that Derwin James is then starting at that nickel position, which in this ESPN article they have listed as that third cornerback. I just don't see how you don't have a man with the talent like Derwin James on the field as much as possible. They have Khalil Mack as the starter right now, and that is something that I do truly expect. But on my long drive back from Nashville, Tennessee over the weekend, I started thinking about the Chargers because I'm a sicko and I'm a psycho. And I thought, is there a world where the Chargers will have Khalil Mack start and then have Akeem Mesidor have more of the snaps because he's the younger body? That is a possibility. We see it all the time. Right now in the soccer action that's going on, we saw a certain country that was playing against ours. They had one of their better players not come on until the very end, so that way he could utilize his skill set. Could that be something the Chargers do with Mesidor over Mack? And then lastly, are the Chargers going to be able to stay healthy at tackle? Those two are going to be a big, important factor for this team. ESPN had the Chargers as the 13th best lineup right now in the National Football League. That seems about fair. I do think that they'll be a bit higher than that, but at least for right now, this does seem like the correct spot for them. ESPN also went into certain aspects of this team into a greater deep dive, so we're not just going to have my initial thoughts. We're also going to have some interesting things that they touched on when it came to the ESPN rankings. ESPN, they talked about the greatest strength for every team, and for this Los Angeles Chargers team, they chose that offensive tackle position, which can be so funny when you think about the depth chart of the offensive line here in Los Angeles and the success or lack thereof last year. What held this Chargers team back was their offensive line and the injuries that they had. Well, if Slater and Alt are going to be able to stay healthy, then I really do think the sky is going to be the limits for this team. Before we continue on, today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app and is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Let's look at my lineup for the football action this season. I have the more on Justin Herbert pass yards. I believe the offense will be much improved in LA, and that should hopefully lead to more passing yards for Herbert. That's why I have the more on his passing yards. I have the more on Quentin Johnston receiving TDs. I believe that Johnston will have more opportunities to catch the football with a hopefully improved offense in Los Angeles. That's why I have the more on his receiving TDs. I also have the more on Rashid Shaheed receiving yards. A full offseason in Seattle should help Shaheed build better chemistry with Darnold, and that's why I have the more on his receiving yards. New user offered. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with PrizePicks. Clickable link to download the app is in the comments and description. Mike Clay of ESPN went into greater detail on why ESPN ranked those offensive tackles as the most important and biggest strength for this team. Both are expected to be healthy for 26. That, of course, is Alt and Slater. And that is massive news for a Chargers team that finished last in pass block win rate, 53.9%, and 31st in run block win rate, 68.9% last season. When they were last healthy together in 2024, Slater was PFF's second highest graded tackle and ranked 10th among all linemen in run block win rate. And Alt, then a rookie, ranked 7th in pass block win rate and 14th in run block win rate among 80 qualified tackles. Tackles are going to end up make or breaking this team. I think we were all able to see as Chargers fans last year what the difference in this team was when you had two healthy starting tackles, one healthy starting tackle, and then no healthy starting tackles. It was just a big issue last year that the Chargers were not able to work through. Now, it wasn't the only issue, but if both those guys are able to stay healthy, those are the best two tackles, or at least it's a close pairing of the best two tackles in the entire National Football League. When those two are together, this team is really solid and is going to be able to play at the height of their powers. The next issue, or I guess next thing that ESPN really broke down was the biggest issue or weakness for this team, and that was that guard position. Right now, I think that when you look at the left guard options for the Los Angeles Chargers, it does worry a lot of fans. Kayode Awosika, Jake Slaughter, and Trevor Penning, they all have their different bugaboos, right? Awosika is someone who was supposed to come in and be potentially battling it out to maybe make this team. He's now clearly put himself into a position where he's competing for the starting spot. Slaughter, someone that you drafted very high in the NFL draft. You'd hope that he'd be able to come in and beat a lot of guys out and end up being that starting guard, but he's never played the position before. Again, I understand that you weren't hitting, you weren't banging, anything like that during OTAs and minicamp, but he was never ever a part of that first group, or rarely ever was a part of that first group. It was mostly Kayode Awosika. So that does worry me a little bit on where Jake Slaughter is. Trevor Penning, well, I think we all kind of know what the issues and dealings there are with Penning. When we look at the offense, though, it is important to note that even though guard might be the greatest weakness, there are ways for this crew to honestly be hidden. And I feel weird saying that because you never want to say, well, if we can just hide this weakness, we'll be okay, because at some point you're going to get got. That's why the biggest weakness is largely called the Achilles heel. Hey, I don't know if you know this about the Greek fighter Achilles, but that's how he died. That was his biggest problem. And while Mike McDaniel is someone who is going to be able, I think, to scheme up a lot of things to help make life easier for these players and to help make life easier on the offense, he can only do so much. There is a clear weakness at that guard spot. Now, I can be proven wrong by those players who are battling it out between Penning, Slaughter, and Awosika to come in and earn the spot and then show that they are better than what we have them labeled as right now in our minds when it comes to their skill set. But at least right now, I don't think that there is a more clear weakness on this Chargers team. What do you think the Chargers' greatest weakness is? Go down below in our comment section. Do you think it's guard? Do you think it's center? Do you think it's tackle? Do you think it's wide receiver? Do you think it's cornerback? Do you think it's safety? Let us know your opinion on where this Chargers team is at down below. Chargers X Factor for 2026. they listed, ESPN that is, as the pass rush. And I find this utterly fascinating because when you look at this team on paper, initially you're going to say, well, the Chargers have a lot of guys that are going to be able to get after the passer. Obviously, Thule is great. Khalil Mack is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. You got to have a lot of hope that Mesidor is going to be able to grow into being a star player. And Dame Tucker has really shown that he could take the bull by the horns. And that's not even to disclude Bud Dupree or Kennard, because there's an opportunity that those guys end up having good training camps, good, practice season, going through the preseason, have good practices, joint practices, whatever, what have you. And then all of a sudden they end up putting themselves in a position where they are making this team and making an instant impact. When you look at the two starters last year, if Khalil Mack doesn't have a lot of injury issues or miss, I shouldn't say a lot of games, but he did miss some games. Well, that tackle number, that sack number, that TFL number looks a lot greater, looks more in par with Thule. Thule was obviously all by himself, but Odafe Oweh was not that far behind him either. So clearly this crew can get after the passer when they're at 100%. Now the question is will Khalil Mack be able to continue pushing forward in his career the way that he has been able to there? When you look at some of the younger players, obviously I think that Mesidor is going to have a lot of success. There's a reason why the Chargers drafted him super high. I was very high on him. Got to see him in person at the Cotton Bowl. Thought he did very well. Very high tackle number. TFL numbers are getting there slowly but surely. 12.5 sacks. That's great. Pressures. Unbelievable. Dame Tucker, he's been kind of the X factor of OTAs in minicamp. I think that he's going to be great for this Chargers team. And you're starting to see more and more that while it is the X factor, I think that it might be honestly something that catches a lot of the NFL off guard, but it won't catch us off guard. Before we continue on with the rest of today's show, I need to let you know that today's show is also made possible by SeatGeek. When it's time to get out of the house, there's not many better options right now than a ball game. And with SeatGeek being MLB's official ticket marketplace, your tickets are fully guaranteed and instantly fulfilled in your account after purchase. I thought it'd be fun to go on SeatGeek and look at some Chargers tickets. Why not look at that first game against the Cardinals? Now, you know me, I'm looking for the best deals, looking for those green dots, and of course, I want to sit near the end zone. Whether it's a Chargers game with a special lady friend or a Co-Wetzel concert with the boys, SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good. Red means bad. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use code CHAT10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with the promo code CHAT10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you so very much, SeatGeek. I understand why ESPN is labeling this group as the X Factor, because you have one guy in Khalil Mack that you're wondering, has he hit the bridge? Is it over? Is Father Time finally going to win? And then you have a bunch of younger guys where it is, what are they going to end up being? Telling you this right now as someone who's locked in every single day on the Los Angeles Chargers, I really trust this group, man. I really trust defensive coordinator Chris O'Leary. Now, I could be proven wrong, but everything that I've heard out of offseason work, out of OTAs, minicamp, only a couple of weeks before we get into training camp, right now, I trust him. And I trust a lot of the players in this crew. I think that it's not just going to be an X factor, but I think it's going to be something that maybe is talked about as the biggest strength next year for this Chargers team when this similar type of ESPN article comes out. Last, let's talk about the Chargers' non-starter to know, and that is tight end Charlie Kolar. Now, this is a fascinating conversation here because I think a lot of people are going to look at the tight end depth chart for the Chargers. And while right now David Njoku is listed as that tight end number 3, I think most people realize that in most situations you're going to have Oronde Gadsden and David Njoku out on the field together. So Kolar then would typically end up being that tight end 3, much like he was in Baltimore. But what a lot of people don't realize is just how impactful Kolar was when he was over there in Baltimore. Obviously, Mark Andrews, that's the guy who's catching all the passes. Isaiah Likely, he's the number 2 guy. Kolar was that 3rd guy. Well, here's what people don't give Kolar credit for. He does 2 parts of the tight end job well. He can catch fine, but he's a better blocker. And Aaron Schatz of ESPN had this to say, and I think it really epitomizes why he's such a big deal. Kolar only had 10 catches for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns in Baltimore last season, but the Chargers didn't bring him in to be a receiver. Los Angeles handed him a 3-year, $24.3 million contract to block, part of the league-wide rise in the value of blocking tight ends. You'll see a lot of Kolar in the 12 and 13 personnel groupings, as the Ravens averaged 5.7 yards per carry with Kolar on the field last season and 4.7 per carry without him. This is great for the running backs in Los Angeles because it's clear that Mike McDaniel understands the way that the world is going to start working in the NFL. If everyone wants to take away the deep ball, which is what the NFL started moving towards once Patrick Mahomes started having a lot of success with Tyreek Hill, well, then we are going to start running the football. We're going to start doing it more, and we're going to force you to not be in your base personnel. We want you to be in that nickel package, which means there's more defensive backs out on the field than necessarily there are linebackers. It's a lot easier to block a defensive back than it is to block a linebacker, and in turn, it leads it to be a lot easier for this running back crew that we have right here in Los Angeles to be able to get home and have a lot of big plays. Obviously, there were some surprising things in there from ESPN, but also at the same time, there were a lot of things that made a lot of sense to me. As I went through the article, I thought that ESPN did a fairly good job. I just wanted to make sure that I shed my own 2 cents on everything. I want to thank everyone for sticking all the way through to the end of today's video. I really appreciate it. We're going to have daily videos out for you, even if my noggin isn't doing 110%. Mix in a water. It's always a good idea. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Hope you guys have a great one, and as always, bolt up.